Howdy folks, Harlow Parkenfarker Jr. here today, and today I'm going to show you how to prep some brass for competitive shooting. This will be my long range brass. It's going to fit my 4590, and I'm going to start with actually some 45100 or 2.6 brass, so that I have the brass when I'm done. It'll be fully sized to fit my chamber. We're going to begin this process by annealing the brass, and that'll make it softer and easier to work. Just let them air cool. I'm going to file a little index mark in this brass. That way I can identify these 120 or so pieces I've got to do as new brass, and keep it separate from my other brass. So I've got a little triangular file, and I'm just filing me a little groove. And it's kind of an index mark, and I'll use that index mark to orientate the brass when I put it in the chamber, so it goes in the chamber each time the same direction. We're going to uniform the primer pockets, and there's a tool for that. It's got little cutters on the bottom, so we put that in, spin it around, try to keep it nice and flat against the black part of that tool. And we'll do it a couple times, shaking out some of the cuttings each time. The brass will need to be trimmed oversized. So I'm putting it here in my trimmer, and I'm going to trim it to a little bit longer than I need. When this brass is fire formed, the fire forming process will expand the brass to fit my chamber. And in the process of doing that, the brass will get shorter. Now I want this brass to fit my whole chamber, so I'm actually trimming it a little bit long. And as I fire it, it'll shorten, and then I'll trim it to a final dimension. We're going to run a little case beveler around the outside, and then around the inside, and that put a little chamfer on the top, cleaning up the cuttings. And it'll allow the bullet to slip in instead of just a square edge. So I'm going to do this extra operation here. This is a case stretcher. It's actually something made by Checker, and it goes in one of your dies. And what it does is actually to stretch the brass, and that stretching process I hope will help to uniform the brass at the top there, so that I'll get even neck tension all the way around the brass on the bullet. After we go ahead and stretch it a little bit, we're going to trim it again, just to make sure we're at the size that'll still fit in my gun. And in that process, we need to go ahead and touch up the bevel one more time. So now we're going to take another step here, and this is going to be a step that'll deburr the primer pocket. You know, these primer pockets, all this brass is just stamped, and occasionally there can be a little burr or something down inside the primer pocket. So this tool has a stopper, and once we're set up, we can go ahead and give it a couple turns. That'll put a little chamfer down inside of that primer pocket. So we're going to complete that process, and then we're going to move on to expanding the brass. And we use a Lee die for this with an expander plug, and that goes down in the brass. That'll allow the bullet to slip in there. Also creates a little bell at the top to make it easier to get the bullet started without shaving lead off the side. So go ahead and run that through, and now we're ready to fire form the brass. So we're going to load it up and shoot it a couple times, just like it was normal brass. And then we'll come back and we'll do another trimming, another beveling, and we're ready to go. Thanks for watching. Harlow Parkenfarker Jr. here today.